Several points. I think, first of all, I think we are very happy with yesterday's decision, long-awaited decision of the European Council on Eastern Partnership. I think it is a very important step forward for my country and countries in this region. I think there are very interesting mechanisms. For the first time, they spoke about the possibility of visa-free travel for the countries of this region. They talk about border mechanisms, which is very essential because I think we can utilize it properly and well. And overall, the other decision as well on Nabucco certainly gives hope that we can move forward on that very important project for Europe. Georgia has secured its own energy independence for the last 3 years, and I think the lesson of Georgia, which was heavily dependent and which was very vulnerable to energy blackmail when we only had sole supplier, when we got alternative, I think since then we are having no energy disruptions and basically things are moving pretty smoothly. With regards to Georgia's proper situation, I think with all the economic trouble in the region, we are, for the moment, doing relatively better. This is thanks to the fact that we have done very important reforms in the past. Georgian economy is non-corrupt. Georgian state is non-corrupt. That this is the principal reason why we are doing better. And we also have to underline that after we've got assistance from the EU and other international donors, I can claim that nobody can find a single euro, dollar misspent, and everything went towards projects. We implemented some of the most efficient reconstruction projects ever implemented in post-war situations in any of the regions of the world. And these are not my words. I think all the international experts present on the ground would confirm the same thing. So right now, despite Russia's occupation of 20% of our territory, despite, of course, world crisis and Georgia's post-war trouble and war troubles, I think country is on the move. I think overall the mood of the people with all the problems is positive. And I think we are continuing to consolidate our democracy, to further democratic reforms, to develop our economy, and to move on the principal track of forming Georgia as a modern European state, and hopefully a role model in our region. That's basically all I had to say, and if you have questions, please. Go ahead.
Regarding this border management mechanism, you think that it will help you in some sort solve the issues with the Abkhazians and the South Ossetians?
I think border management mechanism is a very useful tool. I think if it had been in place before, it would have been even more efficient. You know that something like this, even without Eastern Partnership, was already applied to Transnistria, and I think that was, because of cooperation of Ukraine, a very helpful mechanism. As you know, we have UNMs on the ground in Georgia, and I think they are doing a good job. And overall, I think if we can strengthen presence and apply all kind of soft as well as kind of mechanisms that you are talking about, that only Europe can provide, it will provide for more transparency, for more accountability, for more focus on the region, and will allow us to avoid problems that we had in the past, at least partially. And from that point of view, yeah, what we are really seeing now is not new sphere of influence that one speaker, they told me, put this morning. But we are having basically new mechanisms for stability, for development, and eventually for prosperity of our region. Thank you. Go ahead.
Talking about, I'm from Turkey.
Sure.
Talking about the new mechanism. There was a suggestion from the Turkish side about a new mechanism in the Caucasus. So do you think that it's applicable in that context, in that situation?
Well, we have very good bilateral cooperation with Turkey. We have long experience of working very well with the Turkish government. I have to remind you that we did visa-free travel with Turkey. We did free trade agreement. We have joint airport of Geneva style, the only one except Geneva and Mulhouse in Europe. And we are now doing joint border controls, which is also quite unique for the European continent. So these are all very good examples. Now going to platform, it's still at a very early stage of elaboration. We always welcome multilateral mechanisms. I think we should not create any mechanism that would exclude European Union or the other big players in the region. I think there should be no exclusive regional mechanism, but I think any complementarity to already existing European Union structures and open for any positive actors in the region will be welcome. But as I said, we are now still talking about something that has no clear shape yet, and so we are still at the very early stage of consultations about that process.
Radio France Internationale.
Oui.
Écoutez, Monsieur le Président, un côté
vous êtes où?
Radio France Internationale.
Okay.
Oui, c'est là.
Merci.
Écoutez, d'un côté, vous direz que la Géorgie est occupée par la Russie. À ce moment-là, on voit qu'il y a beaucoup d'entreprises russes qui sont installées chez vous dans la Géorgie. Dites-moi, s'il vous plaît, à votre côté, ça c'est exemple de démocratie ou ça c'est la collaboration avec la Russie?
Non, je crois que c'est justement un exemple de l'économie ouverte. Parce que la Géorgie a vraiment créé un modèle de développement économique avec beaucoup de réussite. Il faut dire que nous sommes 15e dans le monde, selon la Banque mondiale, dans la matière du climat des affaires. C'est très important parce que si on compare ça avec la Russie, par exemple, il y a 135 ou 125, je ne suis pas sûr, mais vraiment en arrière. Nous sommes un des 3 pays moins corrompus de l'Europe, selon Banque européenne de reconstruction et de développement. Donc, c'est pas étonnant qu'il y ait beaucoup de sociétés russes qui ont décidé de faire des choses en Géorgie. Nous sommes très ouvertes. Le problème, c'est toujours une monopolie. Mais il n'y a pas de monopolie avec des Russes et avec personne. En Géorgie, il y a beaucoup de possibilités. Les Russes sont présents dans la matière de l'énergie interne, mais sans monopolie, il faut souligner ça. Ils sont présents dans beaucoup des entreprises de l'exportation, des sociétés de tourisme, et tout ça. La Géorgie n'a pas même appliqué durcissement des régimes de visa avec la Russie. Il y a le même régime simplifié avec les Russes. Les Russes, bien sûr, ont cessé de donner des visas aux Géorgiens. Et ça n'a pas commencé avec la guerre, c'était avant. Il y a des autres limitations appliquées aux Géorgiens. Aucune de ces limitations, aucune de ces prohibitions n'applique pas aux Russes chez nous. Parce que notre réponse à l'agression, c'est continuer de créer une société ouverte, une société transparente, facile à faire, aussi facile pour faire des affaires pour le business, y compris le business russe. Et c'est justement le chemin qu'il faut prendre pour surmonter les difficultés que nous avons même avec notre voisin à ce moment-là. Merci.
This week, Russia announced a major military rearmament. Any comment on that?
Well, I think one thing that certainly is clear, this is first case since the 30s of the last century when a big European power has decided to change borders with the use of force. I think this by itself rings alarm bells for everybody. I think this is very bad for Russia. I think this is very bad for Europe. I think we are essentially talking about challenge of to the European security. And sometimes I'm really confused when some politicians might say, well, we don't regard all this like threat to European security. It's not a hypothetical threat. It's a real reality on the ground. I think at this stage, the with the economic crisis, I don't think anybody will be in position to major rearmament. But of course, that's worth noting that with all the internal difficulties, they still find even time for rhetoric to talk about investing money heavily in something that would be, feeding further aggressive behavior. I believe that we should all concentrate on solving social problems of our people, on overcoming the crisis, on making better lives for our citizens. I mean, that's our own personal recipe. I mean, I have no advice to give to the Russians, to anybody else, but that's how I would see it. Go ahead. Mikheil, microphone.
Hello. My name is Nagao Tanish from Japanese Press. What could have been main differences if or if not last summer's conflict in terms of the energy international corporations, energy resources corporations?
I think last year's conflict also proved that we need diversification in order to avoid trouble. Because I think there was direct link between what happened in January and what happened last August. It was very clear that last August pipelines were targeted besides the targets that were immediately in the friction zone between the different troops. But it also shows that energy is one of the main sources of conflict, but that's why we should concentrate more on diversifying it, on making lines secure, and on making them and developing as many lines as we can in as short period as we can. And that's the lesson. If we saw it, the continuation of last August in January. January was predictable, and I think in 2005, Georgia got blackout for many days because we were heavily dependent upon one supplier. We learned our lessons. And since then, we diversified. We get now 85% of our gas from other sources, and we have 2 alternative sources for that. We are getting more. We are exporting our electricity rather than importing it, and we upgrade our hydropower stations, and we are building new ones, and we are attracting investments for that. We are bringing new energy lines, and all of it enabled that in January, when most of Eastern and Central Europe was disconnected, and I guess temptation to disconnect Georgia might have been very high, if not this independence. And I think that's the lesson. I think to learn for everybody that once you have an alternative, there is much less option for anybody to try to harm and blackmail you. Or if you depend upon sole source, no matter what assurances you get in present day's world when energy has become instrument of foreign policy for some, you are putting yourself in very precarious situation. And I think for that purpose, Nabucco, other Niles, and no matter who says what, no matter what kind of propaganda is applied, there is enough gas in Central Asia and Caspian Basin. Some more is coming. There are other sources that can fill Nabucco, and Nabucco is totally feasible, and economically it's a very sensible project. And I'm very happy that the European Union finally accepted this yesterday, and we'll start to work on it. Georgia will certainly share its experience. We already are host to several pipelines. We'll work with Turkey and other countries in the region, with Central Asia and Caspian, and we'll make sure that this project sees the daylight and finally it's implemented. Please.
Jennifer Friedman with Bloomberg News. I'd like to know what your forecast is for the Georgian economy this year. I've seen forecasts that there's going to be a contraction, and also the central bank says growth. And secondarily, what are your forecasts for foreign direct investment?
I think IMF says it will be positive growth. That's the most authoritative sort I can see. I mean, IMF predicts contraction for most of other countries in the region, and that's already a good thing. Georgian currency has remained stable, unlike all the other currencies in the region. Our banking system has remained stable, unlike most of the banking systems in the region. And if you look at investments, we'll still get billions of dollars of investment this year, despite the fact that investment flows are drying all over the world. I think this is thanks to our anti-corruption climate. I think this is, what I believe is that Georgia was still not in a bubble. We might have got there, but we weren't there. So we had several years of double-digit growth, but if you look speaking about Georgia as a company, as a real, just an ordinary company, it is a real company. It's not inflated company with all the toxic assets. And that's why I think, because Georgia was still underutilized, had underutilized potential, and there are lots of place to grow, crisis hit at the moment when I think it's still, most of it still remains there. So that's why I'm reasonably optimistic. Of course, we will not get anytime soon to double-digit growth, but we will still, hopefully, stay on the positive side, and I believe that with more investments coming, that will, the economy will be sustainable. Look, I mean, if we observed for the last several weeks growing confidence in the economy, if you look at S&P indexes, we were not downgraded like many other countries in the region. On the contrary, the forecast has remained stable, and that gives some, good hope. If you look at visible signs, I mean, you look at Georgian construction sites, most of them are still on. The Free Economic Zone project is still on and is growing very fast. The energy projects and the infrastructure projects like railway, highways, electricity transit lines are still on, and we are speeding them up. And certainly the stimulus package which we implemented also helped. So having said all of that, of course, we still should be very cautious about it, because it all depends where the world economy will go. Yeah, please.
Last year, your adventure in terms of South Ossetia taking on Russians, and were you disappointed by West? They did not support you. In fact, they told you to back down.
Well, I mean, back down, it's easy to say. We said we will never surrender, and we never did. I mean, we will never surrender our sovereignty, our independence, and our territorial integrity. But I think maybe we should have predicted it better, all of us, we and our partners. It was predictable what has happened. We've done all our best to avoid it. We've done lots of peace initiatives, many of them supported by the European Union. We've done lots of rounds of multilateral diplomacy trying to avoid it, and we also did lots of warning towards our partners that it might happen. Unfortunately, until we saw it, nobody could believe it. Because as I said, nobody since the 30s has tried to change border with the use of force in Europe. And so, of course, this was a big revelation and disappointment for all of us. I think we had good cooperation with the U.S. and the European Union in post-conflict situation, and I still count on that cooperation to reverse the results of occupation and illegal use of force. Because if this thing is rewarded, it will be a never-ending story for everybody. Essentially, it's a European problem. It is not a Georgian problem, no matter how somebody will try to describe it some peculiar case with some peculiar country. We are a European country. We are part of mainstream Europe. We are getting closer to the European Union structures, and we have this Eastern Partnership as a framework for that. And what was done towards Georgia will not be unique and an exception if it's basically if somebody gets away with it, and I don't think they will. But we need to be patient, and we need to work through multilateral organisms and diplomacy, and that's why European Union's role in conflict settlement is very important and may be absolutely decisive, and that's what we are counting on now. Any other questions? Thank you.